The latest episode of Bleach the 1000-Year Blood War made quite a splash earlier this week, featuring Ichigo's long-awaited return from the royal palace, just in time to save Kenpachi from the brink of death after the captain was savagely beaten by the Bambies in an ambush, who are the current talk of the town in the world of Bleach. But just who or what are the Bambies? What's the deal with this unique all-girl Sternritter squad of Quincy's? How do they compare to their fellow Sternritter, both in terms of ability and their overall impact in the story of Bleach? And what sort of role do they actually play? In today's video, we're going to shine the spotlight on the Bambies as a group within the cast of Bleach. The Bambies ended up becoming breakout characters of the 1000-Year Blood War arc somewhat, becoming very popular in their own right and as a group. Among the Sternritter, I would definitely argue they're some of the most well-liked characters by the community, and subsequently, Kubo has continued to keep their legacy alive as well through supplementary art and now extensions to their scenes in the anime. So, to be honest, with all that said, this is probably long overdue, but what better time to take a look at them, their history and more, now that they're stepping up in the anime itself. So, without further ado, let's begin. However, before we get started on the video, guys, if you haven't hit subscribe yet, make sure to do that now for more Bleach content like this every single week. And if you enjoyed the video when you're done with it, make sure to give it a thumbs up as well to help support me and the channel. And if you want to take that support from me another step further, I do also have a Patreon as well. And as always, I want to give an enormous shout out and say a huge thank you to each and every one of you supporting me there over on Patreon. I really do appreciate it so very much. So thank you all once again. And yes, there will be spoilers for the remainder of the 1000-Year Blood War arc in Bleach, as we take a look at the overall role the Bambies play within the story. Firstly then, who are the Bambies? Who are the Sternritter that make up this group, and what's their relationship like? The Bambies is a group made up of 5 Quincy women, each a member of the Sternritter, and are supposedly led by Sternritter E the Explode Bambietta Basterbine, hence the name the Bambies. Although Bambi is their self-proclaimed leader, the others in the group don't seem to really respect her or even potentially like her very much, and it seems unlikely they consider her to be their leader either. It's more likely they simply let her believe it in order to placate her, as Bambietta is known for having an unpredictably short temper. Interestingly, the name The Bambies is never actually used in the source material. It was used by Kubo in discussion much later after the fact, and has since remained that way. At the same time, the relationship between the Bambies themselves is unclear. On the surface, they seem to be friends, or at least as friendly as people can actually get within the Vandenreich, which is notorious for fostering a dog-eat-dog, winner-takes-all competitive mentality among the Sternritter. Yet despite that, none of them seem to care for Bambietta at all, allowing Giselle to murder her in cold blood. Or maybe they do care for her in a twisted sense. The anime certainly makes it clearer that the defeated Sternritter were being rounded up by Uryu to be taken for execution at the behest of Yhwach. One mistake, and that's all it takes for you to be killed. After Kangdu and BG9 were collected, it was clearly only a matter of time before Uryu then came for Bambietta too. In zombifying her, Giselle attempts to spare her from that fate, a fate from which they couldn't then rescue her later. Admittedly though, I still don't know why Giselle didn't just heal Bambietta rather than kill her, but there we go. Regardless, as the only women in the Vandenreich, they often stick together and are rarely seen apart, save for certain instances later on. So let's dive a little deeper into the individual characters of the Bambies themselves. As mentioned before, the Bambies are named after Bambietta Basterbine, their supposed leader. Thanks to her shrift, the Explode, Bambietta is able to turn almost anything into a highly destructive bomb, firing an array of reishi orbs at both her enemies and her surroundings to devastate the landscape, causing serious injury at the same time. While immature and quick to anger, Bambietta is nonetheless very powerful, instantly defeating Shinji Hirako after activating her Vollständig. Speaking of which, despite being the so-called leader of the Bambies, as of episode 21 of the 1000-Year Blood War arc, which is, at the time of recording the most recent episode, Bambietta is the only member of the Bambies to still have an unnamed, unenhanced holy form. She is also the only member of the Bambies to never use a bow and arrow. However, of the Bambies, Bambietta gets, arguably I would say, the most amount of exposure in the source material, appearing much earlier than the others and taking part in the first invasion. Bambietta's first appearance in Bleach is in chapter 490, some 50 chapters before the other Bambies would even be introduced, and she quickly became one of the most well-known faces of the Vandenreich early on. Not only that, but she's one of the few Sternritter to actually get two separate fights, firstly against Komamura, and then again alongside Giselle against Mayuri. Bambietta's early design differs quite a bit from her later appearance. During the first invasion, she wields a sword which is never seen again despite being her main weapon at the time. In the source material, she's also seen wearing thigh-high stockings during her first appearance, which also disappear in her subsequent scenes. Overall, Bambietta seemed to be more childish in the first invasion before quickly being revealed to actually be a Black Widow-esque femme fatale who sleeps with Quincy foot soldiers before viciously murdering them. Bambietta's Vollständig, like I said, while unnamed, is still slightly unique. It features a searing hot crimson Reiatsu, sharp-tipped bat-like wings, and reishi orbs from which she unleashes her power. So that's the Bambies' so-called leader, Bambietta, but the other Sternritter that make up the Bambies are as follows. Sternritter G, the glutton Liltotto Lamperd, a childlike Quincy who's the most level-headed and intelligent of the group. Liltotto can often be found eating something to try and satiate her everlasting hunger. Liltotto Shrift the Glutton causes her mouth to warp and elongate in an almost cartoonish fashion, revealing a set of vicious jaws that enable her to devour her enemies. While never actually mentioned in the source material itself, the supplementary light novel Can't Fear Your Own World expands on her power a bit, revealing that she can actually gain the abilities of those she eats, which makes it considerably more powerful in my book. In her first appearance, Liltotto's design was more emotive and childish before she was changed to be more sardonic and unenthused. Liltotto is an interesting character, I think. As one of the more calculated and calmer Sternritter, she makes for a refreshing and welcome change from many of her more zealous and, frankly, insane comrades. While Liltotto's Vollständig was barely utilised in the source material, with a simplistic design featuring a single pair of wings in the shape of two rows of fangs and nothing else, the anime has given her an updated look and ability set. Her Vollständig's name is Gagael, the hunger of God, her Reiatsu turns a golden yellow, and she gains spiked cuffs around her wrists and ankles. Her wings, as I said, initially just a single line of teeth, transform into huge snapping jaws, and she gains the ability to use moves like Spork, Spife, and Golden Crunch. Liltotto's personal Heilig Borgen takes the form of a pair of jaws, and her arrowheads look uniquely like a snapping mouth. And finally, Liltotto's personal wish, as revealed when Candice tells them that Yuha Bark will grant her anything she wants if she takes Ichigo's life, is shown to be an enormous amount of food. Of the Bambies, Liltotto is probably my second favourite of them all. I really do enjoy her personality, and I love that she does look totally unique within the Bleach universe. Sternritter P, the Power Meninas Macallon, is an extremely tall, beautiful, yet oddly vacant, pink-haired Quincy. In the source material, Meninas was one of the least interesting Sternritter in the series, in my opinion anyway, and was afforded the smallest amount of panel time overall within the Bambies. All of this coalesced to make Meninas my least favourite member of the Bambies overall. Meninas' Shrift, the Power, gives her superhuman strength, allowing her to lift even entire building blocks over her head with ease and deliver a punch to Kenpachi Zaraki that totally stops him from moving. Although we only see this facet of her power once, her ability can take on a slightly different look too, where she massively and rapidly bulks up her own muscles. Whether this actually enhances the strength of the power or is just a more literal representation of the strength she contains is unclear. Interestingly, despite being punched in the face by Meninas in this form, Liltotto was still able to go on and subdue her. So far, however, where I said that Meninas was my least favourite member of the Bambies in the source material, while that might still be true, the anime has done a lot to improve her as a character. Despite not seeing her until chapter 544 in the source material, Meninas makes a new, early appearance in the first Quincy invasion in the anime, revealed to be the Sternritter who took Rukia down in battle after the vice captain turned her back on her. Like her fellow Bambies, Meninas' Vollständig and abilities have been greatly expanded on too. Her holy form is now called Pornipora, the power of God, and evolves from just a simple pair of wings in the shape of a row of hearts to something far more ornate and interesting. Her wings are now enormous. The hearts themselves are far fuller, more bulbous, and more imposing, while Meninas herself gains a glittering heart-shaped breastplate, as well as bright pink pads on her knees and feet. She also wields a pair of reishi dumbbells with which to battle her enemies in close quarters combat. Some of the abilities she can now use include Dumbbell Duster Baton Beat, Dumbbell Duster Halterez, and Diamond Push. Interestingly, we do briefly see Meninas using her weaker holy form when she attacks Ichigo in the anime as part of the 8 Sternritter skirmish. Meninas' bow is elegant and heart-shaped, while her arrowheads also take the form of hearts. Meninas' wish, that she would have been granted by Yhwach, appears to be to live in a luxurious mansion. Sternritter T, the Thunderbolt Candice catnip, is a fiery, rageful Quincy who wields the power of electricity and has a shock of lime green hair. Much like Meninas before her, Candice was another Sternritter that I never found that interesting. Personally, I think we've seen her character type and personality plenty of times before in Bleach, even among former girl squads in the series too. That being said, I always loved her shrift. Much like Bambi's The Heat, the Thunderbolt takes a typical elemental power, and I think gives it a fairly unique application. While Candice gets a similar amount of exposure to the rest of the Bambies, she's the next to be defeated after Bambietta overall. But, on the flip side, she's Ichigo's primary antagonist in his battle against the Bambies, giving her ample opportunity to display her abilities. Due to Candice being the main combatant against Ichigo, the anime had to do less overall to bring her up to speed with the rest of them. That being said, her Vollständig is named too, now called Barbariel, the Thunder of God, and its design changes slightly to add small emerald lightning bolts to her collar, her thighs, and her boots as well. I also loved the extra details Kubo included when it came to Candice that helped her to stand out from the crowd. The fact that the wings of her Vollständig, which appear as individual bright green lightning bolts, can be ripped out and used as blades is an awesome concept, and I like that when she uses her ultimate ability Electrocution, even her eyelashes begin to emit a crackling power. Candice's abilities include Galvano Blast, Galvano Javelin, and the aforementioned Electrocution. She's also capable of transforming into electricity herself to move faster and avoid attacks, but this is omitted from the anime unfortunately. Her bow takes the shape of lightning bolts, while her arrowheads look more like traditional arrows than the others, but with bolts of electricity shooting off them. Although Candice is the one who tries to motivate her friends to fight harder by telling them Yhwach will grant them any wish should she kill Ichigo, her actual wish is never revealed. Finally, we have my personal favourite member of the Bambies, Sternritter Z the Zombie, Giselle Jewel. A goofy, playful, yet darkly sadistic and twisted Quincy, Giselle is easily one of the most terrifying characters Kubo has ever created, yet also one of the most fun at the same time. It's that juxtaposition that makes her both so frightening but endearing also. She's both irredeemably evil in her treatment of her victims, particularly of someone who is supposed to be her friend and ally in Bambietta, yet she's interesting too, with a great design to boot. Giselle has an extremely emotive face, with long black hair capped off with cockroach antenna to symbolise the fact she can never die, and a tiny Vandenreich cap. Much like Bambietta before her, Giselle is a Sternritter that gets 2 separate fights, one against Ichigo and then another against Mayuri deeper into the second half of the invasion. Not only that, but Giselle goes on to survive her encounter with Mayuri and even switch sides along with Liltotto, becoming the Bambi with the second highest amount of panel time in the source material. Thanks to her shrift, the zombie, Giselle is able to withstand even mortal injuries. For example, her body is able to be split open by the sword of a Shinigami, and she's capable of snapping her broken neck back into place. Mayuri even remarks later on that it appears the commander of the zombies is also a zombie herself. Giselle is able to freely control the flesh of the deceased, using it to graft body parts back together again and even heal her allies. Speaking of her allies though, the main ability of her shrift allows her to turn people into mindless zombie slaves. This comes in 3 different forms. Firstly, by splashing her blood onto living Shinigami, we can see that she can control them while they're still alive and very much aware, as when she forces members of Squad 11 to kill themselves in front of her as they plead with her not to do it. Secondly, by collecting corpses and infecting them with her blood, Giselle can raise an army of the dead, as we see when she uses the bodies of the 11th Division to do her bidding. Except at this point they're all clearly actually long dead and much more of a traditional zombie. Then there's the more animated zombie servant. Giselle finds the unconscious Hitsugaya and infects him, turning him into a slave to her will, yet he retains his mind and even personality to some degree. Other captain level fighters that she enslaves includes Kensei, Rose and Rangiku, but all 3 of these characters have actually been killed prior to their zombification, whereas Hitsugaya hadn't. And then there's the sad case of Bambietta. As a Quincy, Bambietta can't be zombified while she's still alive. Instead, Giselle brutally killed her before turning her into her plaything. Bambietta retains some of her former self as a Quincy, but is now totally submissive and dependent on Giselle. Giselle's personality is truly depraved. The Sternritter loves to control and toy with the lives of those she has ensnared, going so far as to degrade and mock Bambietta, clearly getting a twisted satisfaction from her former friend's dependency on her. Really, Giselle is unlike any character Kubo has ever created, and the Thousand Year Blood War arc takes a much darker turn during this fight, which we're going to see very soon in the anime. Though admittedly, it seems likely to me, considering Mayuri is Giselle's opponent, that Kubo was simply trying to parallel Mayuri's former horrific treatment of Nemu during their battle with Uryu in the Soul Society arc. In the anime, much like her counterparts, Giselle's Vollständig and abilities are expanded upon. Her Vollständig's name is revealed to be Azal Biora, the Death of God, and its design changes too, her Reiatsu transforming into a deep, dark blue. Originally, her holy form took the shape of a pair of skeletal wings, and while the enhanced design retains that, it also adds a chibi skull and ribcage combination to her chest, and a skeletal tail now runs down her back. Her new abilities include Dancing Dead Boys Club and Munchy Munchy Babies, where she's able to summon cartoonish skeletons who, when destroyed, immobilize their target. Giselle's bow is composed of thin bones, and her arrowheads take the shape of skulls with crosses for eyes. In her battle against Yumachika, the Shinigami outs Giselle as actually being a man. Initially, when I first read this chapter, I naively thought Yumachika was just lying to insult Giselle, but Kubo revealed the character is actually biologically male. However, Giselle clearly identifies as a woman. Finally, Giselle's wish is only showcased as total darkness. This is either a joke and her wish is being censored, or she really does just long for the void. Now let's take a look at the role of the Bambies throughout the story of Bleach. Considering the majority of them don't appear until chapter 544, they're very much endgame villains, appearing only towards the end of the series. Bambietta, however, is introduced much earlier than the others. She gathers with the rest of the Sternritter at the Gate of the Sun in chapter 490 and assaults the Soul Society. Bambietta is sent to Squad 7, where she carves up a number of soldiers before confronting Captain Seijin Komamura. Bambietta battles Komamura briefly. A slight extension to their fight is shown in the anime where she kicks a ball of reishi towards him, which explodes after he cuts it in two. As Komamura activates bankai, Bambietta steals it with her medallion. Meanwhile, as Byakuya is defeated by Asnod, Rukia senses his Reiatsu disappearing and runs to him, only to be struck down by her Sternritter opponent from behind, insulted that Rukia would turn her back on them. For a long time, the community thought the most likely candidate for this character was Giselle, but it was revealed in the anime to be Meninas. Later, as Squad 7 seems to be defeated, Komamura is re-energized by the appearance of Yamamoto on the battlefield and motivates his men to get back on their feet, surprising and concerning Bambietta. And then, when Ichigo arrives in the Seirete, Bambietta senses his Reiatsu vanish without a trace, but doesn't really know what's going on. Later, after the Vandenreich achieve victory in this first fight, Bambietta escapes through the shadows, having at some point cut off Komamura's ear. Meninas leaves as well in the anime, pondering whether the defeated Rukia can still hear her or not. After this, in Silburn, the Sternritter gather to await Yhwach's announcement. As Uryu arrives in the anime, Giselle wonders who he is to be allowed on the same stage as Yhwach himself. In fact, in the anime, this scene is the first time we see Candice, Giselle, and Liltotto, but in the source material, only Bambietta is shown. Yhwach proclaims Uryu to be his heir before all of the Sternritter. Bambietta is shocked by the news, and Meninas questions it. As the announcement ends, Bambietta collects a Quincy foot soldier and takes him back to her private quarters for some special relief, killing him after presumably sleeping with him, venting her frustration at the news. In the source material, this is when we're introduced to Candice, Liltotto, Giselle, and Meninas. The four of them enter Bambietta's room, annoyed with her for creating such a mess. When they all begin to bicker, Bambietta blows a hole in the wall, prompting Candice to ask her what's wrong. Bambietta muses then that she's worried about the future of the Vandenreich itself. In the anime, however, Candice asks Bambietta if she's going to the communal Sternritter meeting hall, as Liltotto comments that Basby is over there now, creating a commotion. And once there, the five of them sit together, listening as Basby rages at the situation, with Liltotto chastising him and calling him a roosterhead. Meninas, meanwhile, wonders if Yhwach doesn't have long to live, while Giselle says that Candice should try and make a move on Uryu, causing Candice to yell at her to stop implying that she's a slut. In the anime, we next see the Bambies as they sit with the rest of the Sternritter as Hashwolf briefs them on the next invasion. Bambietta is the only one who speaks, saying that regardless of what happens, she wants to kill Komamura. Their next scene in the anime is they all gather together to invade the Soul Society, walking through the newly transformed streets. Much later, after the first round of battles is complete, a mysterious shadow approaches the unconscious Hitsugaya. This is none other than Giselle, collecting another fallen warrior to later use in her army. Meanwhile, Bambietta looks on as Komamura's bankai leaves her medallion and flies away. She tosses the medallion aside, causing it to explode as she chastises the other Sternritter for getting so worked up over losing something that wasn't even theirs to begin with. Thinking that she's talking to the rest of the Bambies, Bambietta turns around only to find that they've ditched her and run off, despite it being Liltotto's idea originally that they all move forwards together. Enraged, Bambietta begins annihilating the entire surrounding area with the explode, only to be stopped by the arrival of Komamura and Shinji. Shinji subdues her using Sakanade, and in the anime the two battle briefly, but after unleashing her Volstendig, Bambietta swiftly defeats the captain, forcing Komamura to intervene. The other Bambies are all revealed to be watching her on a nearby rooftop, both Candice and Giselle's own holy forms resonating with the others and popping out involuntarily. Bambietta takes on Komamura in a battle, but he easily overwhelms and bests her thanks to his new human transformation, striking her with a massive blow from his bankai, causing her own bombs to be pushed back into and detonate on contact with her body. Seriously wounded, Bambietta falls from the sky and crashes into the city below, the first of the Bambies to be defeated, which I think was a surprise to everyone back in the day. To rescue her from Yhwach's wrath, Giselle and the other Bambies approach Bambietta's crippled body, and Giselle murders Bambietta off screen, transforming her into a zombie. Later, after Kenpachi Zaraki is greatly injured thanks to his battle with Gremmy, the Bambies descend on him and his squad like vultures, determined to pick them all off now that they've been weakened. I always appreciated this mentality. It shows that while these villains don't have any honour, they are pragmatic, and this is really the smartest thing to do in a war situation. Candice and Meninas deal with Kenpachi himself, blasting him with lightning and landing an enormous punch on his back, which is enough to take him out of the fight, while Giselle and Liltotto deal with the rest of the squad, eating them and turning them into zombies. With Kenpachi at death's door, the Bambies squabble over who gets to finish him off, only for Ichigo to return from the royal palace just in time to save him. Candice attacks Ichigo immediately, but he swiftly launches her into a building. Giselle, Liltotto and Meninas attempt to fight him, but Ichigo defeats them all with ease as well, sending each of them flying. As they collect themselves, Liltotto reveals that she knows his identity, but Candice keeps trying to fight him after activating her Volstendig. Ichigo just continues to overwhelm her, however, and in the anime, this is when the other three use Sclaverai to empower themselves, activating their own holy forms and taking the fight to Ichigo once more. Although they put up a decent showdown, showing off a plethora of colourful abilities, Ichigo is able to almost effortlessly repel them all, culminating in him using Getsuga Jujisho to nullify Candice's most powerful attack: electrocution. Although Candice loses an arm, she has Giselle restore it before preparing to battle Ichigo some more. However, sensing Ichigo's arrival on the scene, Basby turns up and snipes each of the Bambies with Burner Finger 1, taking them all down momentarily. Unfortunately for him, the Bambies all return fairly quickly, unable to be killed so easily, before Liltotto says that whoever lands the killing blow on Ichigo will be the one to take home all of the glory. As Ichigo races to confront Yhwach, Meninas slams his head into a nearby building and sends him flying into the sky with Diamond Push, before all of the Sternritter are stopped by the arrival of the Gotei 13. As the Gotei 13 block their path, Liltotto proposes that they simply use Volstendig to quickly annihilate the Shinigami, and the two sides come together in a huge clash. As Yhwach blasts off towards the royal palace, the sheer amount of power creates a vast shockwave that separates all of the fighters. Giselle ends up on her own and summons the zombified Bambietta to help take down Ikkaku and Yumachika before Mayuri arrives on the scene. In a battle of the zombies, Giselle uses Bambietta to fight Mayuri, allowing her friend to be viciously injured in the process. As Giselle reveals an entire army of zombified Shinigami ready to do her bidding, Mayuri retaliates with his own resurrected corpses, the Privaron Espada, along with Lupi and Charlotte Coolhorn. Chaos unfolds as the two sides fight, with Giselle trying to restore Bambietta's shattered body in the process. As Charlotte attacks the two of them, Bambietta is beaten to a pulp, so Giselle calls in her trump card, the zombified Hitsugaya who she picked up earlier, who she then uses to quickly incapacitate Charlotte. However, Mayuri fends off Hitsugaya and defeats him in battle, but not before he's able to call for aid. The zombified Rose, Kensei and Rangiku all arrive, but after battling Mayuri's Arankar, their blood is swapped out, forcing them to now work for Mayuri rather than Giselle. The battle lost, Giselle is stabbed through the chest by Kensei and seemingly killed. Across the battlefield, Candice has been defeated off-screen by Byakuya along with Robert and Nanana, leaving only Liltotto and Meninas standing. As the two of them wonder where Pepe went, the missing Sternritter returns, having taken Hisagi under his control. Unexpectedly, however, Pepe then turns on his own team and tries to attack Liltotto and Meninas with Love Kiss, attempting to ensnare them both under his control and then have them all kill each other before taking the glory all for himself. Although Liltotto successfully dodges the attack, Meninas is hit by his power and immediately falls in love with him. Now doing Pepe's bidding, Meninas turns on her friend and punches Liltotto in the jaw, the two of them continuing to fight off-screen. However, once Pepe is defeated by the Shinigami and sent flying into a nearby building, Liltotto appears, wounded but alive. She then activates her Volstendig and, as vengeance for what Pepe did to them, devours the Sternritter completely using the Glutton. A bit later, as the battle in the royal palace escalates, a wounded Giselle, revealed to be very much alive, has slunk away into hiding with Bambietta beneath some rubble. There, Giselle tries to drain Bambietta of the blood she once gave her in order to revitalize herself, but Bambietta pleads with her to stop. Maddened by this insubordination, Giselle savagely beats Bambietta, apparently killing her once again, before suddenly, as if a switch has been flipped, falls in love with her corpse. Yes, this all really does happen. Liltotto discovers them and explains what happened to her, including that she was forced to take Meninas down. However, despite that, she doesn't believe that either her or Candice are actually dead, and that despite the Sternritter being the stronger side overall, Liltotto theorizes that it would be bad news for them if those two were killed. Suddenly, Robert appears, pointing a gun to Liltotto's head. As Liltotto questions his motives, Robert hysterically reveals that since they've all been left behind by Yhwach, they've now been deemed expendable by him and will be killed to empower the Quincy who were taken to the palace above. Right on cue, Yhwach unleashes the Owl's Veil in enormous columns of light, striking the ground. Liltotto pushes Giselle out of the way, showing some concern for her, so maybe they are actually all friends, but their Volstendig are still sapped away by the light regardless. As Giselle tells Bambietta's corpse that she won't let them die, Liltotto defiantly screams that that's correct and she isn't going to die here either, furious over Yhwach's seeming betrayal. Later, Liltotto, along with Giselle and Basby, join the Gotei 13 and help them build a gateway to the royal palace, vowing to destroy both Yhwach and Hashwolf for abandoning them. Together, they all make their way up to Yhwach's new fortress built on the back of the Quincy sacrifice down below, Varvelt, where the three Sternritters split off from the rest and take the Gate of the Sun directly to Silburn itself. While Basby faces Hashwolf, Liltotto and Giselle, rather optimistically I must admit, attempt to fight Yhwach. However, Yhwach, as expected, swiftly and easily defeats them both off-screen, leaving Giselle lying face down in a puddle of blood, and Liltotto with a serious injury to her stomach, blood pouring out of her. Liltotto then collapses after saying it's a shame they weren't able to even scratch Yhwach, and both of them are presumed dead. So that's it for everything the Bambies do in the source material. As you can see, some of them, namely Bambietta, Giselle and Liltotto, actually play quite a lengthy and interesting role in the story, with Liltotto and Giselle making it all the way to chapter 635, while Candice and Meninas are definitely given less to do overall. Which, as I mentioned earlier, is honestly fine by me, as Giselle and Liltotto are my two favourite members of the Bambies anyway. Of course, the anime is still adapting the 1000 Year Blood War arc as we speak, so their roles might be changed in the future. And if so, maybe we'll look at them once again when the series is completed. But now felt like the right time for this video since they were just the stars of this week's episode. And of course, the Bambies all appear in the supplementary light novel Can't Fear Your Own World, all of them alive and well, including even Bambietta, which you can hear more about in the videos that I've dedicated to covering it. This was honestly longer than I was expecting it to be, so there's clearly more to these characters than maybe meets the eye. It's obvious, in my opinion, that Kubo himself liked them a lot, and like I said at the top of the video, as far as Sternritter go, they're absolutely some of the more popular characters. But let me know your thoughts on the Bambies as a unit. Who is your favourite member, and which Bambi moment is your favourite in Bleach? I'd love to know, so please do let me know in the comments down below. But that's it for this video, guys. I really do hope you enjoyed it. Like I said, let me know your thoughts on the Bambies down below. Make sure to hit subscribe if you haven't done already. Give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. And until next time, I'll catch you later. And I'll see you then.